His words just hung there, in the air between us, heavy and cold. "I hate you," he said. I just, I hate being here. I want to live with Mom. Permanently. My son, Liam, my 11-year-old boy, almost 12. He looked at me, not even angry anymore, just resolute. Like he'd finally said something he'd been practicing, something that felt like a truth to him. And it ripped through me. A sharp, clean tear right down the middle. I remember standing there in the kitchen, the low hum of the refrigerator suddenly too loud. We'd just finished dinner, pasta with pesto, his favorite, or what used to be his favorite. The plates were still on the table, a few green flecks clinging to the ceramic. I've been trying to get him to talk all week, ever since he came back from Chloe's. My ex, his mother. Usually he's a chatterbox, telling me everything about school, his friends, whatever new YouTube channel he's into. But this time, nothing. Just grunts, shrugs, eyes glued to his phone. I'd pushed gently at first, then a little harder, asking if everything was okay, if something happened at his mom's. And then this. The silence after he spoke stretched, minute after minute. My chest felt tight, like someone had cinched a rope around my ribs. Permanently. Not just a tantrum, not just a passing wish to spend more time there. Which, fine, that happens. Kids sometimes prefer one parent's house for a bit, or the other, it's normal. But permanently. And the "I hate you" part, that was the real gut punch. I've heard it before, usually during a particularly bad homework battle, or when I've taken his iPad away. But this was different. There was no heat behind it, no childish frustration, just a flat, weary declaration. I tried to swallow, but my throat was suddenly dry. I looked at his face, trying to find some crack in that resolve, some flicker of the kid who used to climb into my lap for stories, who'd still sometimes hug me tight, almost too tight, just because. But there was nothing. His jaw was set. His eyes, usually so bright, looked almost dull, like he'd already checked out. It hit me then, a cold dread that this wasn't just a bad day. This was a line he'd crossed, and he wasn't looking back. We've had our issues, Chloe and I, since the divorce 5 years ago. It wasn't amicable, not really, but we'd settled into a rhythm. Alternating weeks, Wednesdays, and every other weekend. It wasn't perfect, but we'd always made it work for Liam. He was the priority, always. Or that's what I told myself. What we both told ourselves. We had rules, shared calendars, tried our best to present a united front, even when we wanted to strangle each other. And Liam seemed well-adjusted, happy. That's what teachers said, what his friends' parents said. He was a good kid. Still is. But something had fundamentally shifted, something I completely missed, or chose to miss. My mind raced, trying to rewind the last few weeks, months even. Was there a specific moment, a fight, something I said, something I did? Was it that I'd been a little stricter about screen time? Or maybe when I told him he couldn't get those expensive new sneakers he wanted? Little things. Normal parenting stuff. But this felt bigger. Much, much bigger. Like an iceberg that's been floating unseen beneath the surface. And now, finally, the tip had broken through, threatening to sink everything. And I had no idea how to stop it. He just stood there waiting. Not for an apology, I realized, but for my surrender. The memory of that night, of Liam's stark declaration, still makes my stomach clench. It's hard to reconcile that kid with the hopeful, slightly naive guy who met Chloe nearly 15 years ago. We met in a bar, the Salty Dog, down on the waterfront in Savannah. I was 27, she was 26. I'd just landed my first proper engineering gig after graduating, and she was a budding graphic designer, fresh out of SCAD. It was a Friday night, March of '09, I think. I remember the exact date because it was Saint. Patrick's Day, and the whole city was a madhouse, green everywhere. We were both just trying to escape the crowds, ended up at the same quiet corner of the bar. She had this easy laugh, a little raspy from yelling over the music, and eyes that just crinkled at the corners when she smiled. I was instantly hooked. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. Our families, our dreams for our careers, how much we both hated cilantro. It felt easy, like we'd known each other forever, even though it was the first time. We exchanged numbers, of course, and then started what felt like a whirlwind romance. Dinners at local spots, long walks through Forsyth Park, weekends exploring the coast. Within 6 months, we were practically living together in my tiny 2-bedroom apartment near Daffin Park. She brought her plants, her art supplies, and this incredible energy that made my somewhat structured, predictable life feel suddenly vibrant. Looking back, there were things, little whispers, you know? Nothing huge, nothing you'd notice if you weren't actively looking for cracks. Chloe was incredibly passionate, which I loved, but that passion sometimes flared into something else. A quick temper, a sudden coldness. I remember one time, about a year in, we were at her parents' house in Atlanta for Thanksgiving. Her mom, Carol, made some offhand comment about Chloe's choice of a career, suggesting she should maybe get a real job with benefits. Chloe just shut down, went completely silent, excused herself, and stayed in her old bedroom for the rest of the day. Wouldn't even come down for pie, which was her favorite. It was a drastic reaction, I thought, but then Carol was a little overbearing. I rationalized it as just Chloe standing up for herself, being sensitive about her art. We got married 2 years later, June 2011, a small ceremony on Tybee Island. The ocean breeze, close friends and family, everything felt perfect. Then Liam came along in 2012, and it was like our world snapped into focus. He was everything. That pure, unconditional love you feel for your child, it's unlike anything else. I threw myself into being a dad, still working my job, but every spare moment was for him. Chloe was a natural mom too, but I started noticing a shift. The little bursts of anger became more frequent, directed at trivial things. A spilled glass of milk, a late train. She'd snap, then feel terrible, apologize profusely, sometimes cry. I always put it down to the stress of new parenthood, the exhaustion, and the demands of a baby. We were both overwhelmed, right? Our daily life became a routine of trying to manage these emotional peaks and valleys. I'd come home, make dinner, try to keep the house calm. Chloe was always on edge, it felt like, though she'd deny it if I ever brought it up. We'd try to talk, but it often devolved into her feeling attacked, me feeling unheard. We started keeping separate finances, not because of mistrust, but because her spending habits were spontaneous. She'd buy expensive art supplies or clothes on a whim, then panic when the credit card bill came in. I tried to suggest budgeting, but she hated anything that felt like a restriction. It was always easier to just handle our own money, less conflict that way. The big one, the real red flag I completely blew past, was her growing need for control over Liam's schedule. When he started kindergarten, she was hyper-focused on everything. What he ate, who he played with, every minor sniffle. It felt protective at first. A mom looking out for her kid. But it became obsessive. If I suggested a different play date or a different activity, it was met with resistance, sometimes outright hostility. She always had a reason, a rational explanation, and I didn't want to rock the boat. I just wanted peace, wanted our little family unit to function. I was a fixer, always had been. I thought if I just worked harder, was more patient, more understanding, I could fix us, fix her. I thought I was being a good husband, a good father. Turns out I was just ignoring the slow-motion car crash that was unfolding right in front of me. And now, Liam, my son, was feeling the impact. The car crash I mentioned, it wasn't a sudden explosion. It was more like one of those slow-motion pileups you see on a security camera, where you just watch helplessly as one car nudges another, then another, until the whole thing collapses. Our divorce wasn't a surprise to anyone who was really paying attention, not even to me, if I'm honest with myself. We'd been drifting apart for years, but the real escalation started when Liam was about 5, just before he entered first grade. That's when Chloe's need for control, especially over him, really tightened its grip. I remember the first major incident vividly. Liam was invited to a birthday party, his friend Finn's, at a trampoline park. Chloe absolutely hated the idea. "It's too dangerous, David," she'd said, pacing our living room. "He could break an arm, a leg. Those places are just germ factories, too. And what if he falls and hits his head?" I tried to reason with her. "Chloe, it's a trampoline park. Kids go there all the time. Finn's parents will be there. It's supervised. He's excited about it." She wouldn't budge. "No, absolutely not. I've already told Mrs. Henderson that he won't be able to make it." I was stunned. I hadn't even had a chance to talk to Liam about it yet. When I did, he was crushed. "But Finn's my best friend. Dad!" Everyone's going. I tried to explain that sometimes Mom gets worried, but even as I said it, it felt thin. He looked at me, small and disappointed, and for the first time, I felt like I was failing him, because I couldn't stand up to her. That was the first crack in my own blind spot. My best friend Ben, who'd seen us through college and beyond, tried to talk to me about it. We were having beers one Tuesday at Maloney's, our usual spot. "Dude, I've noticed things," he'd started, swirling his amber ale. "Chloe's always been intense, you know. But this stuff with Liam, it's getting a little much. She's isolating him, man. Not letting him go to things, always hovering." I remember feeling defensive immediately. "She's just being a protective mom, Ben. We all want the best for our kids." He just sighed, took a long swig. "Yeah, but there's protective, and then there's controlling. And she's not just doing it with Liam. She's doing it with you, too. You seem like you're walking on eggshells." He wasn't wrong. I was walking on eggshells. But admitting it out loud felt like admitting failure. The second major incident that sticks out happened during a family trip to St. Augustine. Liam was 7. We were supposed to spend a week exploring the historic sites, the beaches. Everything was fine, for the first couple of days mostly. Then Chloe became fixated on Liam having a specific kind of organic, gluten-free snack bar that she'd packed. He didn't want it, he wanted an ice cream. "A normal kid thing," she insisted. "Liam, you need to eat this. It's healthy. The ice cream will upset your stomach." He started to fuss, then cry. "No! I want ice cream! Everyone else is getting ice cream!" I tried to intervene. "Chloe, it's vacation. One ice cream isn't going to hurt." She turned on me, her voice low and sharp. "You're undermining me, David. You always do this. You have no idea what's good for him." The argument escalated right there on the busy street near the Castillo de San Marcos, with people staring. Liam was sobbing by this point. We ended up leaving, going back to the hotel. The rest of the trip was tense, ruined. I felt a cold anger settle in me then, a realization that her anxieties were now actively sabotaging our family's happiness. Eventually, the fights became more frequent, more public. They weren't just about Liam. They were about money, about my job, about her job, about chores, about everything. One evening, after a particularly vicious fight about how I loaded the dishwasher, yes, the dishwasher, I just sat on the edge of the bed, feeling completely drained. Chloe was crying in the living room. Liam, who'd been asleep, woke up and came to stand in the doorway, his eyes wide and scared. "What's wrong, Daddy?" "Why is Mommy crying?" His innocent question hit me harder than any of Chloe's insults. I realized then that our constant bickering, her unpredictable outbursts, were polluting his childhood. This wasn't a healthy environment for him. That's when I finally admitted to myself, and then to Ben, that I couldn't fix it. Something had to give. The divorce itself was brutal. Chloe fought me on everything. Custody, assets, even furniture. She wanted primary physical custody of Liam, arguing that I worked too much, that I wasn't as attuned to his needs as she was. I pushed back hard. I loved my son more than anything, and I wasn't going to let her cut me out. We ended up in mediation for months. Lawyers on both sides, the whole ugly circus. My parents, bless their hearts, tried to stay neutral, but I could tell my mom, Joyce, was worried about me. She'd call, "David, are you eating? Are you sleeping? And this is taking such a toll." My dad, Robert, was more pragmatic. "Just get a good lawyer, son. Protect your boy." It was exhausting, financially and emotionally. We finally settled on shared custody, 50-50. Alternating weeks with a midweek dinner swap. It was the best I could get, given how much she wanted him. I moved into a smaller house, still in Savannah, but closer to Liam's school, trying to make the transition as smooth as possible for him. For the first few years after the divorce, things were okay. A tense truce, really. We'd exchange Liam at the school or at a neutral coffee shop, barely speaking beyond logistics. He seemed to adjust, thriving in both homes. Or so I thought. He was still the happy kid, still chatty. But then as he got older, around 9 or 10, I started noticing the familiar patterns, creeping back in, only this time through Liam. He'd come back from Chloe's house sometimes quiet, withdrawn. He'd make comments like, "Mommy says I shouldn't eat that because it's bad for me," referring to something I'd made for dinner. Or, "Mommy thinks that teacher is unfair." It was never direct criticism of me, not exactly, but it was subtle chipping away, presenting her worldview as the only correct one. I tried to counteract it gently, saying things like, "Well, Mommy has her opinion and I have mine. Everyone sees things differently." But I could feel the invisible threads tightening, subtly, imperceptibly, until that night in the kitchen, when Liam finally uttered those words that shattered everything. The escalation hadn't stopped with the divorce, it had just gone underground. And I was too blind, too desperate for peace, to see it truly building up again, right there in my son. The "I hate you" thing. The "I want to live with Mom permanently." That wasn't the actual moment of truth, not really. It was the shockwave. The real moment, the one that cracked my entire reality into a million pieces, came a few days later. After I'd tried everything to get Liam to open up, he just shut down, retreated into himself. Barely spoke a word to me. It felt like I was living with a stranger. The silence in my house, usually filled with his laughter or the sounds of his video games, was suffocating. I called Chloe, trying to be calm, trying to appeal to whatever shared sense of parental responsibility we still had. "Chloe, Liam just told me he wants to live with you full time. He's been really withdrawn since he came back from your place." What happened? There was a pause, a beat too long. On the other end, then her voice, cool and collected. "Oh, David. He's just expressing his feelings? He's an emotional boy. You know that. Maybe he just needs more stability. You're always so busy with work." It was a classic Chloe deflection, a subtle jab. Turning it back on me, I tried to push. "No, Chloe. This feels different." He said he hates me. Did something happen there? Did you say something to him? She bristled. "How dare you accuse me?" "I would never." "Maybe you should look at your own parenting, David. Maybe you're the one who made him feel that way." The conversation dissolved, as they always did. No answers, just more accusations. I was restless. Couldn't sleep. I kept replaying Liam's words, Chloe's dismissive tone. It felt like a puzzle piece missing. What was it? What could have pushed him to that? I sat at my kitchen island late one night, scrolling through my phone, trying to make sense of things. I went through old photos, just looking for clues for anything. Then, an old notification popped up on my Facebook feed. A memory from 5 years ago. It was a photo of Liam and me at a local park. And in the comments, his paternal grandmother, my mom Joyce, had tagged Chloe's mom, Carol. Carol had replied, "He looks so happy with David." My poor Chloe always trying to do her best, but David just doesn't understand her. My eyes narrowed. That was a weird comment. Carol had always been, a bit dramatic, but also seemed to genuinely like me. I decided to do something I hadn't done in years. I logged into Liam's old iPad. He had a new one now, but this old one was still sitting in his desk drawer. He rarely used it anymore, mostly for old games or to watch some cartoons. I figured if he was truly unhappy, maybe he'd talk to someone, a friend, online. I felt a pang of guilt, invading his privacy, but this was my son. I needed to know. The device was slow, took forever to boot up. The screen flickered to life. I knew his password. It was his birthday. I went through his messaging apps first, then scrolled through his browser history. Nothing out of the ordinary, just YouTube, Roblox, kid stuff. Then I saw it. A folder tucked away deep in his photo gallery labeled homework. Totally innocent, right? Except I knew he rarely, if ever, used the iPad for homework. I clicked on it. My breath hitched. It wasn't homework. It was a collection of screenshots, dozens of them. They were conversations. From an app I didn't recognize at first, but then I realized it was a messaging app Chloe sometimes used for her art collective, something called Art House Chat. But these weren't about art. These were screenshots of conversations between Chloe and Liam. I started reading. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. The first few were mundane, just love you, sweetie type stuff. Then the tone shifted. Your father just doesn't understand how sensitive you are, does he? He's so caught up in his work. I know it's hard when you're at your dad's, but just focus on coming back to me. We'll be happy here. He thinks he knows what's best, but he doesn't know you like I do, Liam. I'm the only one who truly protects you. There were conversations where she coached him on what to say to me, subtly, to make me feel bad. Tell Dad you miss my cooking. Tell him you don't like his rules about screen time. One screenshot specifically jumped out from about a month ago. It's okay to feel angry at your father, honey. He made me very sad for a long time. He broke our family. If you want to live with me permanently, we can make that happen. You just need to tell him how you feel. Very clearly. My vision blurred. It wasn't just my son's words anymore. It was a pattern, a careful, calculated campaign. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. A cold sweat broke out on my forehead, despite the cool air conditioning. I felt sick, physically sick, a wave of nausea washing over me. This wasn't just a child's unhappiness. This was manipulation. It had been going on for years, slowly, insidiously chipping away at my relationship with Liam, poisoning his mind. I remembered Ben's words. She's isolating him. And my own blindness. This wasn't just a blind spot, it was a crater. I stared at the screen, the blue light reflecting off my horrified face. The quiet hum of the refrigerator, the distant chirping of crickets outside, everything seemed to amplify the silence in my head. Denial fought a desperate, losing battle with acceptance. No, Chloe wouldn't. She loves him. She wouldn't do this to her own son. But the evidence was right there. Irrefutable. Ugly. Each message a small, venomous dart aimed at the bond I had with my child. I stood up, pushing the iPad away from me like it was something toxic. I paced the kitchen, back and forth, rubbing my temples. What do I do? What do I say? How could I confront her? What do I tell Liam? My mind was a whirlwind of anger, betrayal, and a crushing, heartbreaking sorrow for my son, who was being used as a pawn in a game I didn't even know was being played. I looked at the clock. It was almost 3 a.m. No, I couldn't call her now. I needed to think. I needed to breathe. My chest felt like it was going to explode. The only thing I could do, the only thing that felt right in that moment, was to get out of the house. I grabbed my car keys, pulled on a pair of shorts and a t-shirt, and just drove. No destination, just driving, needing to escape the suffocating walls of my own ignorance. The city was dark and empty, just like I felt. Driving around in the dark didn't help, not really. It just gave me more time to replay those screenshots in my head, each message a fresh stab. By the time I got back home, the sun was just starting to lighten the sky, casting a pale, sickly yellow over my kitchen. Liam was still asleep. I had to face this. The immediate practical consequences hit me first. If Liam really moved in with Chloe full time, and that meant losing half my custody, half my time with him. That would impact child support, obviously, but honestly, money was secondary. It was the idea of losing him, of this manipulative wedge being driven between us, that terrified me. I called my lawyer first thing, a woman named Elaine Reynolds, who'd handled my divorce. She was calm, pragmatic. David, this is parental alienation. It's serious. Those screenshots are crucial evidence. She advised me to document everything, keep the iPad safe, and not to confront Chloe without legal counsel. But I couldn't just sit there. I had to talk to someone who knew me, knew Chloe, knew Liam. I called Ben. I just laid it all out, the whole ugly truth, reading him some of the messages. He was silent for a long time on the other end. David, holy hell. I knew she was manipulative, but this is a whole new level. He sounded genuinely shocked, and his support, his righteous anger on my behalf, was a small anchor in the storm. My parents were heartbroken when I told them. My mom, Joyce, burst into tears. Oh, my poor Liam, and my poor David. My dad, Robert, was furious. That woman! We always knew there was something off about her. But to do this to her own son, to use him like that. Their anger was validating, but it also highlighted how little I'd let myself see before. They'd tried to warn me in their own ways, but I was so wrapped up in making things work. The hardest part was trying to act normal around Liam. He was due to go back to Chloe's that Friday morning. I tried to talk to him again, gently. Hey buddy, still thinking about staying with mom full time? He nodded, wouldn't meet my eyes. Yeah, it's just easier. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake him, to show him the proof, to tell him his mother was lying to him, manipulating him. But Elaine had warned me, do not involve Liam directly in the conflict. It would only make things worse, potentially alienate him further. It was an agonizing tightrope walk. So I just held him, told him I loved him, and tried to keep my voice steady as I packed his bag. Watching him leave, knowing what I knew, was one of the worst moments of my life. It felt like I was handing him over to the enemy. The legal process started. Elaine filed a motion for contempt of our custody agreement, citing parental alienation. It was going to be a long, drawn-out battle, expensive and draining. My work took a hit. I was distracted, constantly on edge. My boss, Frank, a good guy, noticed. He just pulled me aside one day. Hey, David, everything all right? You seem a little off. If you need some time, just let me know. I briefly explained the situation, enough to make him understand I wasn't just slacking. He was understanding, told me to take whatever time I needed, which was a relief. During the discovery phase, more things came to light. Chloe's lawyer tried to paint me as an absentee father, too focused on work, emotionally distant. Standard stuff. But then an unexpected discovery. Chloe's bank records, subpoenaed as part of the legal process, revealed a pattern of increasingly large withdrawals over the past year. Not for art supplies or anything normal. They were cash withdrawals, almost weekly, and a couple of suspicious payments to an out-of-state bank account. Elaine thought it was odd, unrelated to the alienation, but definitely a new piece of the puzzle. Another layer of chaos added to the already spiraling situation. What was she doing with all that cash? Was she in some kind of trouble? The thought didn't make me feel sorry for her, just more frustrated, more confused. It seemed there was no end to the unraveling. I still had Liam's old iPad hidden away, my secret weapon, but a weapon I couldn't yet wield. It felt like I was preparing for war, and my son was caught on the battlefield. It's been almost 6 months since Liam said those words, and the dust is not settled, not even close. We're still in legal limbo, still waiting on court dates. Liam is still doing his alternating weeks, which feels like a small victory, or maybe just a temporary reprieve. He's a little less withdrawn when he's with me now, sometimes even laughs at my dumb jokes. But he still won't talk about Chloe's house or the conversations. It's like there's an invisible wall up, and I don't know how to climb it. I'm living in this weird state of hypervigilance, constantly analyzing every word, every gesture, trying to rebuild trust, trying to show him he's safe with me, that my home is safe, without making him feel like he has to choose sides. It's exhausting, to be honest. My relationship with Chloe is completely shattered, beyond repair. We only communicate through lawyers or through a co-parenting app. And even then, it's just logistics, devoid of any warmth or shared concern. It's hard to imagine ever having a civil conversation again. What have I learned? I guess I learned that ignoring problems doesn't make them go away. It just lets them fester, lets them grow into something uglier, more damaging. I let myself be blind for too long, convinced myself that if I just kept the peace, everything would eventually normalize. That was a huge mistake. I also learned that people you think you know, people you loved, can do truly unimaginable things. It's a bitter pill to swallow, realizing how thoroughly I was manipulated, how our son was manipulated. This whole mess has made me question a lot of things about myself, about my judgment. It's definitely affected how I look at relationships, making me wary, I guess. I still have a good support system, Ben. My parents, they've been incredible. Like, my job is secure, which is something, but there's a shadow over everything. This constant worry about Liam. Will he ever truly understand what happened? Will our relationship ever fully heal? Will he resent me for putting him in this position, even though I was trying to protect him in my own misguided way? I'm grateful for the few people I've talked to about this, even strangers online sometimes. Just knowing I'm not alone, that parental alienation is a real thing, that other people have been through this kind of nightmare, it helps. It really does. I don't know what the future holds, what the judge will decide, or how Liam will navigate this. All I can do is keep fighting for him, keep showing up, and hope that eventually the truth, in whatever form, will set us both free. But man, the questions just keep piling up. Will Chloe ever face real consequences for what she did? And how do you help a child recover from that kind of emotional manipulation? I genuinely don't know.